question that we got first.
All right, so the question is, what are some coverages that we provide when the home is vacant that other companies may not offer? So there's one endorsement that we offer that I think is huge compared to what a lot of other carriers are offering, and that is our comprehensive endorsement. It's not available in every state at this point, but it is available in numerous states.
The comprehensive endorsement, if you can sell that to your customer, please do from a claims aspect. So what that does is it takes it from a named peril policy where the policy is going to cover between 8 and 9 specific items that cause damage, and it's going to allow us to cover anything that's direct, sudden, and accidental that's not excluded by that policy for the first party homeowner damage. And that goes a long way. Frozen pipes. There's a whole lot of other claim scenarios that we'll probably talk about that really aren't covered when it's a named peril policy, but people, when they buy insurance, they do anticipate that's covered, and that's where that comprehensive coverage really helps.
Yeah.
And from the sales standpoint, one of the things I want to mention is one of the other endorsements that we offer is the Vandalism and Malicious Mischief endorsement. Well, under the comprehensive endorsement, vandalism and malicious mischief is one of the perils covered. So what we will see is the comp endorsement is $180 annually. That's flat rate no matter what the value of the home is. The vandalism and malicious mischief endorsement is not. That can change based on the value of the dwelling. So there have been many instances where the comp endorsement actually is less expensive than the vandalism and malicious mischief endorsement. Now, the one thing to remember when looking at adding the comp endorsement versus the vandalism and malicious mischief endorsement is the comp endorsement only covers the dwelling itself. So if there is a detached garage or any other structures, those additional perils would not be extended. Those other structures would only be covered at the named peril. But for most customers, that is a good. It's still a good fit and a good solution.
And I think that comprehensive endorsement is huge, and this is, I don't know, for whatever reason, Bernie, maybe it's from our claims background, but the claim I always think of is spilled paint, because I think, well, also I was staining my deck a couple weeks ago and spilled an entire gallon of paint, and I was like, you know what, I have a comprehensive homeowner's policy. Maybe they can save my deck. I saved it on my own. But, you know, these vacant properties, a lot of times they're vacant because they're renovating, and if you spill paint all over your carpet, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's obviously not a named peril, so.
And that's with, policies, you really got to look at that specific policy, the definitions in that policy to be able to get coverage, right? There might be a couple different policies that might treat that situation a little bit differently.
Well, what are some, just coming from my sales background, when you're talking about this, because that's a good example, and just thinking, all right, so when you say things to me, like if I'm a customer and you say like vandalism, mischief, things along those lines, how would an agent use that when they're actually talking to them? Because if I'm like, hey, I can cover you for vandalism and malicious mischief, I'm going to be like, okay. So what would you like? What would you help me to? Would you give some examples? Like if I'm an agent, how am I going to use that? Am I going to use some examples?
So I would definitely use examples.
What are safe examples?
Safe examples.
Paint,
like
vandalism. Paint is not safe apparently.
So a vandalism, a couple ones come to mind with vandalism claims we see a lot. Well, not a lot, but enough that it's common. You get your garage door graffitied.
Okay.
Neighborhood kid. 12, 15-year-old thinks it's really fun to use spray paint, comes around, spray paints all over your garage door. If you don't have vandalism or malicious mischief or the comprehensive coverage, that's not going to be covered by the named perils.
So let me ask you this then, because this is a little bit different. So if I'm, if my house is on the street and some kids are playing baseball and the ball goes through my window or hits my garage, things like that. Now that's different, right? I mean,
that's totally different. That's an accident.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying.
That's where what Matt was talking about, especially if it's an attached garage.
Yeah,
that's where the comprehensive coverage.
Exactly.
So anything that's direct, sudden, accidental, physically damaging the property, that's not excluded. So that falling object of that baseball coming in and hitting the property, then we could have coverage for that potentially.
Yeah.
My encouragement would be to simplify as well.
Yeah.
We went into a lot of detail about some of these different things, and for the most part, though, when explaining vandalism, keep it simple. When explaining, My my biggest thing is when you're explaining what different things are covered or aren't covered. First of all, don't explain what is and is not covered.
Yeah,
That's a good.
It's always
Let
good.
his people do
Good
that, please.
disclaimer.
It's always a good point.
Please leave all coverage investigations to your adjusters.
Yeah.
Do not start having coverage questions or conversations and explain, yes, this is covered or this isn't covered. Especially if a customer calls you and says, hey, this happened, is it covered? Help them file the claim. Help them, get in contact with our claims department. Most agents are not licensed adjusters, and which means at the end of the day, they are not legally able to say, yes, something is covered or is not covered. Do not bind coverage or do not, create an extra contractual what's the word I'm looking for?
Payment.
Yeah, thank you.
When an event happens to the home, Matt's completely correct. The best thing that you can do is help that customer get a claim filed, get an adjuster assigned, and that adjuster will investigate the coverage.
That's a great point, because just thinking from the perspective of the customer. I mean, I've been in an accident. I don't know about all of you, but when you're in an accident, you're razzled. You know what I mean? You're frazzled, and you aren't thinking clearly. So to have somebody who's an expert in handling claims and asking these questions, feel free to call your agent. They'll direct you over to an adjuster, but then the adjuster can ask you the right questions, to make sure you're actually covered, and make sure hey, this is something we cover, and just to get all the details as it happened, because you'll start to forget things after they happen, but you won't remember to answer those questions unless somebody's asking you the right questions.
Yeah. And the best thing that I see from a claims perspective that our agents can do when that happens is when your customer calls you, don't just give them, oh, here, call, file a claim at this number. Talk them through, set expectations of, hey, I'm going to give you a number, or even warm transfer over to file a claim with your customer. What we'll do is we'll be giving, the base information to one of the customer service associates. After that, they'll get us assigned with an adjuster who will be in contact with you, usually within 48 hours. Walk your customer through, set that expectation, because you're right, they're frazzled. Usually when our customer has a claim, it's probably one of their worst days of the year. So we all have to think about when we're having a bad day. Do we think always on our feet? No. So let's get them, set those expectations so they feel the comfort they need.
Yeah. And it's scary, right? Like if you've ever had anything like that happen, that's the whole reason you want an agent. You don't want to buy this online policy where you have to figure it out on your own. Your agent is the person that's there for you to hold your hand and make sure you get everything done the way it's supposed to be done. And so I think that's a huge selling piece for all the policies we offer here, not just Vacant. But I would be curious, too, because I liked the claim examples on the vandalism and malicious mischief. I went the paint route on the comprehensive. Is there another easy kind of go-to where we can help people understand that?
Yeah.
Because between name, peril, and comprehensive, that's a huge difference in the coverage you're getting.
So the big one that I think of is a frozen pipe or a burst pipe.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's say the water heater bursts.
Right.
On your named peril policy, typically not going to be covered unless a vehicle crashed through the side of the house and hit the
And
water
hit
heater.
the water, right.
If you have a comprehensive policy, that water heater bursts due to wear and tear. Now, the water heater itself would not be covered, but the ensuing water damage that occurs from that sudden burst, there would be coverage for that on a comprehensive policy. So, or a frozen pipe. Gets a really cold spell. Pipe freezes. It thaws out. Before we get back to the property to check on it because it's vacant, it thaws out, now water is spraying everywhere.
Okay.
That's not going to be covered on your named peril policy. Potentially could have coverage on the comprehensive policy.
Okay.
So those are huge exposures, and those things happen frequently.
Those are some of our common Vacant
Yeah.
claims we see. Okay.
But so with what you're saying, I mean, kind of coming back to you, Matt, with keeping it simple. Do you think that's a simple enough scenario where if an agent's explaining that to a customer, hey, these are just the two differences, but relevant, right? I mean, that's relevant for them to know and be able to explain that to a customer so the customer understands the difference and why it's important.